All right, Don, we are recording. What's going on?
We're talking about queens and making splits. So the easiest way for most people is just crowd them beehives down. 5 frame, 8 frame, just keep them in a single and put the feed to them. Now, that's cutting cells out. That's the most natural way. But, a lot of people are going to step up and they're going to make a lot more splits. So the next best thing is to make them with a ripe queen cell, and we will be selling queen cells that are ready to hatch. So let me know ahead of time. I got a bunch coming off the 21st. Uh, the best way to set those up is to use mini nuke and close your hive up, put your cell in there, put a couple bees in there. What we usually do is take an 8 frame box, and we've got a screen on the bottom. We dump about 4 packages in there, and we roll them a little bit, spray them down with sugar, and roll them back and forth so you can see them crawling. They're not flying. And we basically got a dipper. We just reach in and dip it. It's an old water dipper, and it's about a cup or a little over a cup. And we just drop 1 cup of bees in each little mini nuke, close them up for 24 hours, and they'll come right up on that queen cell to keep it warm, and it hatches. Now, if for any reason the queen doesn't come back or doesn't hatch, you're out about a cup of bees. But if you do a 5 frame box and the temperature drops on you and there's not enough bees in there, they can't keep that cell warm because of the area that's inside there, you're going to have less bees to take. You'll have a lot more losses. So the most efficient way is to do the mini nukes. But a lot of people don't want to do that. So the best thing to do is you got a good strong hive, take a couple frames out, drop this ripe queen cell. Now this queen cell, if you put it up into your ear, you can hear that queen walking in there and scratching a little bit. Or you can use your cell phone, the light on it, or a good flashlight, and put it on the back side, and you can actually see the queen moving in there. That's how we call it candling. We used to candle eggs that way. That way you know you got a good, viable queen that's coming out. That's the most efficient way to do it. That way you're not losing a lot of bees. But as time keeps progressing along, queens are going to get harder and harder to get. By the end of this month, you should be making a lot of splits. We're setting up boxes like crazy. We're going to start turning 500 queens to 1,000 queens, hopefully a week now. So we're going to have 100 to maybe 125 extra cells on the 21st. And the following week, it'll be a Friday or Saturday, we're going to push for 200 or 250. So if you need 25, 50, or whatever you need, let me know ahead of time, because they're going to hatch out in a day or two. And you can transport those. I don't want to ship them. I'd rather just hand them to you and you can put them in your hives. That's the best thing to do on these making cells. Now, we've had people talking about on these Apivar strips. Here's the Apivar strips, people using them. Now, if you're going to ship nukes and stuff, some of the bee inspectors require you to have one of these in your box. People wanted to know if you take them out in 45 days. Here's one here, basically, if you can tell the difference on the color. You see the different colors? They're a white, and when you first get them, and then they get less and less. This is what they call impregnated plastic. It's got the chemical right in there. You could take your hive tool and basically scratch that surface on both sides and reactivate it. And you can get a year, 5 years on them things, no problem. We try not to run them in the bee yard, but we got people picking nukes up, and if the inspector happens to check your loads and stuff going out, they need to be in there. They used to require a piece of that in a package, but they stopped doing that. I guess it's getting too tiresome for them to start checking it. We're going to have loads of packages out in April. So if you haven't got your order in, best thing to do is get that order in. Nukes, same thing on the nukes. We've got nukes going out as early as the first week in April. And my son might be on here tonight. He's down at one of the bee yards, and he's got intermediate service down there, so he might be jumping in here. Has anybody got questions about these cells or these strips and stuff? I'm sure.
Up. Nobody?
Nobody wants to talk.
All right, well, I'll take a web question then, since you were talking about inspectors. Jared wants to know, I would like to know what time he finds best to have the state inspector visit each year and why.
Well, if you're going to ship interstate commerce, you need to have the inspection stickers either applied to nukes or applied to your packages. Or if you're mailing, you got to have that sticker attached to the box when you mail it. Now, I would get on that list and get yourself inspected as fast as you can, because I think Steven said he just had the inspection down our southern yard yesterday. So get it as quick as you can, because if you got queens going out, if the post office checks and you don't have an inspection on it, they can hold them until you can prove they've been inspected.
Now, that's once a year, Don?
Well, it's usually required once a year, but you're subject to an inspection about any time. They can come and basically just go through your yard. Another thing about inspections is most bee inspectors, they used to go through your hives. Now they won't do it. You can usually ask them what hive do you want to check, what frame you want them to pull. But if you get in a state where you got a rambunctious inspector and they reach for a center frame to pull one out, I would stop them in their tracks, because they're going to roll queens on you. I've had some in the past 10, 15 years ago do that. So speak up. It's your livelihood. And if you got breeder queens out there, you're paying $350 and they start rolling a few of those, it gets to hurting. So kind of know your rights.
Okay. Bobby has the first question. Go ahead, Bobby.
Hey, Don. I have a quick question about those queen cells. How do you give those to customers? Do you just actually hand them off, or do you package them in some way?
You mean the queen cells, what I'm selling them?
Yeah, the red queen cells. How do you get those to the customers? Do you literally just hand them over, or do you package them?
No, we put them on a bar. Now you can do cells either way. You can use those JB cells. They're plastic. They snap into a frame bar, and there's usually 15 to a bar, 3 bars to a frame. We make ours out of wax. So we put a good coating of wax on the bar, and then we attach the wax cells to it. And then when we get ready, we put them in a cell starter. And then our finisher, we use in an incubator. And we used to use a chicken incubator. You can get those like at Tractor Supply. We're using an old refrigerator now. We can do 1,000, 1,500 at a time in there. So we've converted an old refrigerator with light bulbs in it.
Okay.
You just take a knife and slice them right off of there, put them in a Cool Whip container, get an old t-shirt or something and line it with, and flip the top of the t-shirt over the top and kind of keep them from getting chilled.
Perfect. That Cool Whip container idea. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go down to Don's anytime. He'll have a Cool Whip container full of queens just walking around. And
I'm sure.
all right.
All right. Thanks,
I
guys.
pulled up some videos for you.
What the hell is that? Okay, who is next? Anybody else? Come on, everybody's being shy tonight.
They all have questions until they get on the air.
Andrew has a question. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, so when you get those queen cells,
You're gonna have to speak up. I can barely hear you.
I'm sorry, can you hear me here?
Yep, that's better.
All right. When you get those queen cells and make your splits, how long do you know, like how long before you put the queen cell in do you split those hives? And I guess the other one is how long can you wait?
Well, you can wait. I mean, they're going to hatch out 24 to 48 hours. That's your time window you have. But we had some this past week. We had about 15 or 20 that started hatching out because the timing was off a little bit on a few of them. And there was probably 40 or 50 cells there. You can reach down and pick up that virgin queen. You can put her in a cell protector and put a drop of honey in the bottom of the cell protector. But these cells, you can either stick them between 2 frames of bees, or you can take your thumb and make an indentation and just set it into the indentation and put 1 frame in a hive and stick it up against the wall. I do a lot of 1-frame splits when it warms up. And you don't need brood when you do this. A frame of honey and a bunch of bees. There's no need to have anything in other than some honey when you got some bees in there. Okay?
All right. So if I have a queen cell, when you make your splits, can you like make your splits and just put the cell right in there? Do you have to wait a certain length of time?
No,
Sorry if
no.
I missed.
You're talking about a ripe queen cell that you're going to buy.
Yes.
Okay, you set that in there, and you got to have at least a good handful of bees in there. You have to keep that cell either warm or cool, depending on what time of the year it is. Right now, you need enough bees to keep it warm. There's no need to feed it. It's a sealed cell. It's going to hatch like an egg. It's going to come right out. You'll see that bottom of the cell, they'll cut it out, and she'll come walking right out.
We're at least a month and a half, 2 months away, but we're on the subject. So thank you.
Okay, but it's an excellent way to take a few hives and make great numbers real fast. The other way you make queens is, the people like to do walk-away splits. You take a 8-frame or a 10-frame hive and divide it in half, walk away. You can make a queen, and a lot of times they come back. You have good results and you have bad results. The drawback of that is doing that walk away and versus buying mated or ripe queen cells is you could take that same hive, make 10 or 15 splits out of it, and have even half of them that don't come back. You're still further ahead than doing a walk away. So it's a commercial way of building numbers up fast.
Over to Bobby again. Go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, Don, another quick question for you. When you're making, say a dozen splits in a single yard, how do you prevent just a massive robbing attack? Like, what are the techniques you would implement there? Just wait for a honey flow, or?
No, you're making cells all the time. We're making splits all the time. When you're making splits in that, you're doing it either in a 5-frame, an 8-frame, or if you do it a 10-frame. But most people are going to make it in a 5-frame. So you're going to put an entrance reducer in there, and you're going to reduce the entrance down to where maybe 2 or 3 bees can pass at a time in the entrance.
Okay.
But the most efficient way would be a mini nuke, and you drill a 1/2-inch hole in that. That way, 2 bees can guard that entrance. So you're not going to get no robbing. Now, when you go to feed minis now, you can either use a top feeder, a bottle feeder, an entrance feeder, or you can put an inside feeder in it. We build our inside feeders for those.
Okay, so just keeping the entrance,
Reduced.
real small. Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see. Next over to Brandon. Go ahead, Brandon.
Hey, I wanted to ask about the never-ending problem that's being caused by feeding the bees sugar and hive beetles. How to trap
Hive
them.
beetles and feeding sugar.
Yeah, or
Hive
basically
beetles,
just
because your hive got weak, or you're dumping pollen substitute and stuff like that in there.
no pollen substitute.
No.
But I've had a little bit of a hive beetle problem when I tried to use the political signs with the Crisco. That kind of didn't work for me. I don't know. It may have been I had put a pollen pack in it at that time.
Are you taking, if you're putting you put boric acid in the political signs?
Yeah.
All right. If you take 10 or 12 of those and stack them in your hand like a deck of cards,
Yeah.
the maximum boric acid, not the borax, boric acid, about a teaspoon to a 1/2 teaspoon, just dribble a few little grains in each one.
Yeah.
Now, if you fill them up, there's no place for beetles to get in. And then you seal up each end with Crisco. That attracts the beetles to it. No,
Yeah, much in
a
there.
lot of people put boric acid, or they put borax in there rather than boric acid.
Might have done that. That might be possible. That may have been why it didn't work. Yeah, it was the only thing that.
Buying a card, filling it up with water. You put water in the wrong end, it's not going to work.
Yeah, that was my fault. Okay, cool. That's good to know. I'm gonna do that now. I'm gonna switch it over to Boric.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, over to Mr. Zirkle. Go ahead, John.
Hello, everybody. Don, the question I think that Andrew wanted to follow up on was that when you make a queen cell split,
Right.
do you move the bees first and let them feel that they're queenless and then add the queen cells, or you do it all at one time, don't you?
Yeah, we do it all at one time.
Okay.
we got 1 yard. Last week we made 300 splits in less than an eighth of a mile. That's the area of the bee yard that we're setting up. That bee yard's going to run about 2,000 mating nukes in it. So a lot of times people hear about making splits, but they're not listening to the single details. I keep saying you seal them up. Now you got to close them up, and you close them up for 24 hours. So, if you got a lot of bees in there, I mean, 2 days ain't going to hurt them because you've got a frame of honey in there, or you've got an inside feeder. So you're putting feed to them. They're not going to starve. If the queen hatches out, she can stay in there a week. It ain't going to hurt her. But they orient, 24 hours to 2 days, they're going to orient. And we do several hundred of them. And I mean, we're doing them about a foot, 18 inches apart, rows and rows of them.
Now, do you ever put anything in front of the hive entrance so when they come out, it forces them to reorientate?
No, we're
Okay.
closing the entrance. All right. We take a box, we drill a 1/2 inch hole in it, we push a dowel rod in the hole. Okay, and on the other ones, the 5-frame nukes, we got an 1.125 hole, and we have a 2-inch piece of hardware cloth with a thumbtack at the top, and it folds down, closes the hole up, so they get air through it, and they can't get out. There's no way you can rob them.
Okay.
They're closed up. You open them up when you want to let them come out in a day or two.
Okay.
So, when people tell you that they put grass in the entrance, more than likely, and I don't know for sure, but more than likely they got a 10-frame hive that's robbing and they're throwing grass in it to keep the entrance reduced down. So by putting a plug in it or a screen across it, I'm doing the exact same thing. Okay?
Okay. Thank you. That was my question.
All right. See, if you're trying to do this stuff over the internet, people's expanded mind is only focusing on every other word. So they're missing chunks of this information out there. So they're only going to do part of it. And then they wonder why it's not working. So that's why we do these chats. So if you got a problem doing it, right away you mention what's doing and we can figure out what you're doing wrong. We want you to be successful.
Okay. On to Dwayne. Go ahead, Dwayne. Oh, wait, you got unmuted on your end.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, there we just a quick question, Don. Just say I want to try to raise 20 queens a week and mate them. How many big hives would I need to keep enough drones to keep that pace up?
Well, 20 hives is really not much. I mean, one hive, you got more than enough. We're running probably 50 breeder hives in a 1 yard, and we're running probably 500 mate nukes there. But about half of them got 1 frame of green comb, just to kind of make sure they're plenty drones. So if you put a starter strip,
Yeah, I was just looking at like the
frames, they're going to draw enough drones by themselves, normally in a mating yard.
Okay. Yeah, I was wanting to know. We've just been cutting the cells before, but I think I'm beyond that point. I need to I got to come down there and get you to show me how to do the grafting.
Cutting cells, more than likely, you're going to have more than enough drones. But see, when you start grafting out 1,500 to 1,000 cells and you're coming off every 2 to 3 days, you're going to go through a lot of drones.
Yeah, I'd rather have too many than not enough. That's for sure. All right, that was all I had. Thanks.
Okay, over to Patrick. Go ahead, Patrick.
Hey, Don, I was wanting to know, you said put a 1/2 inch hole in the mini mating nuke. Is it a 1/2 inch or a 3/4? Because I think most of the ones I built, I put a 3/4 hole in them.
If you got a 3/4 hole, it's not going to hurt nothing. You're just going to have a little bit more bees can go in and out. You can either get you hardware cloth, put across the hole for a day or two, or you get a 1/2 inch dowel rod and stick it in there.
So the hole won't be too big for them to protect the entrance from getting robbed out?
If you got a 3/4 hole there, it takes about 5 bees to guard that hole.
That's it.
So, you're not going to get, sometimes we got feed that's leaking out in feeders, and we're running hundreds of hives in one location. And you're not going to have that robin problem.
Okay, nobody else got their hands up, so we'll go with another web question. Tina wants to know how to recoup after losing her hives over the winter.
Best thing to do is start splitting. And if you don't have enough bees to split, get you some bees. Order some bees or buy some nukes. That's the best way. I mean, it depends on where you're at, how fast you can split them things.
She does have 3 nukes ordered from you already.
Oh, okay. Well, you can take those nukes now and set them up and buy some extra queens with them and split them. I mean, those are 5-frame nukes. You could split those easily, make 2 out of it.
Okay. And Brandon, go ahead.
I don't know. I guess my next plan is I want to get like 25 of the queen cells from you. And I've already made like a few mating nukes, but I need to make a bunch more. Is what I'm learning right now. And
Keep making.
do what?
Keep making them. You know,
Make
we're
them.
going to make a couple hundred every few days. Stephen just kicked out about 500 here just the last couple days.
And I feel like I'm getting a lot of information off of what everybody's saying, but I'm not really going to learn until I'm down there with you in person. You know?
Well,
I mean, I've learned
you
a
can
lot.
buy a lot of bees, or you can buy enough bees to learn. And
Right.
that's how you're going to learn. You're going to have to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. If
Yeah,
you
I've made a
don't make
bunch.
Mistake, you're not going to learn nothing. So.
Right. Right.
The
No,
whole thing
I'm
is
worried
try
about
to learn, and so you don't make as many mistakes.
Yes. Right. But I just wanted to let you know that. That's what I'm planning to do. I'm going to have to figure out how to get the whole operation balanced out. And I
I
want
would keep building, you know, as many of those mini nukes as you can do, and you can put, you know, shake some bees in there. Come over here. You can buy 50 or 100 queen cells, and you can have hives going.
Yeah.
Feeding them is the cheapest thing.
What are the cheapest thing?
Feeding them, that's the cheapest thing.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Don't put them on a diet. Everybody wants to put bees on a diet.
Yeah.
Feed the bees.
Don't think it makes
Pack them up.
Yeah. I'll keep them fed. It doesn't make sense not to feed them. I don't think.
Well,
Like you
there are
had-
people that like to put lots of water in there and make it go further.
Right? Yeah, that's not as good as sugar, I've learned. The more sugar in the syrup mix, the better.
Now, Greg will tell you, you come down here and you watch how we feed. It's altogether different than a lot of people. And we
All right.
got your check there, Greg. So, you know, you're good to go.
All right. Cool.
Greg's got him a whole bunch of bees. So if you need bees, you better get a hold of Greg before we get sold out.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Over to Robbie. Go ahead, Robbie.
Hello. This year I'm planning to make splits. I don't have a lot of feeding buckets to feed the bees. How often do you order feeders to be ready for the splits?
You mean a feeder for feeding bees?
Yes.
Oh, you can get those from the bakery and just drill them with a drill bit.
Okay.
You know. Now you get in the buckets. You don't have to put them. You
I
can
put
use-
when I put over 2 blocks of water.
blocks of water.
The plug.
No,
He's asking about the
put
plug for it.
Over the feeder.
Yeah. You mean what size plug do we use?
Or what you use.
You can use a bucket from the bakery, and you can drill a lid out and use a plug that way, or you can drill the side out. And
Okay.
open feed. If you're going to drill the sides out, you're basically open feeding. If you're going to drill the lid out with a plug, you can buy a 50 millimeter plug and put one small hole in it and stick it on the top of your beehive. And you don't have to fill that bucket all the way up. You've got a
Okay.
gallon bucket, you can put an inch in there, and it's going to last a week.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Greg, did you have something to add to that, or?
Yeah, Robbie, if you're looking at building those, or anyone, those pail feeders, it's when you're feeding straight fructose like Don does. I mean, there's a huge I don't want to say argument about whether or not to feed fructose or not, but the bees go absolutely insane when you give them that much carbohydrates. You know, it's not, I think the impression is folks are against feeding syrup and they're against feeding high fructose corn syrup because they automatically assume anybody who's feeding, they're robbing all the bees, all their honey, starving them of nutrition, and they're just giving that till they get by. What folks don't understand is most folks that are using that, like Don, anyone who's raising queens or making nukes, you know, when you have 5 to 1 and that heavy of a syrup, you know, they're making a lot of wax because they have really high carbohydrates to start off with. When you can put that in a bucket feeder and get that right on top of a hive, using those pail feeders, they have quick access right to all that feed and they go to town. And I've never seen bees. I've seen Don's bees over the last, I don't know, Don, maybe four, maybe even 5 years now. And when Don switched to using high fructose, I mean, I've seen the difference even in his yard. And his yard always has the best bees because he's always kept them fed. But with the high fructose, I mean, last year I really noticed the difference. With that 5 to 1 feeding it straight, I mean, they were big and fat and healthy, and they're just so prolific. So if you can, you know, if you're thinking about using the bucket feeders, they're really easy to make. There's YouTube videos on it. We have one on it. They're easy to make. The hardest thing sometimes is to find the right plugs to put in those. If you need help with that or you want some more information, shoot me a message. We have those plugs on our website at Nature's Image Farm too. And that video is on YouTube. They're really easy. You can make them yourself. And those feeders really do make a huge difference. If you are trying to make a bunch of splits, the hardest part sometimes is keeping them fed early on. You can put those bucket feeders on a queen castle. You can keep them fed and you can control that feed, you know, turn it off and on. It's like a valve. And I've learned that from Don. You can just turn that bucket upside down, put it back on. Even when it's cold out, you know, when it's 25, 30 degrees at night, but it's getting up to be like 40, 50 during the day, you can turn the bucket upside down to feed it. Go in there at nighttime real quick, turn it back up before it gets too cold, and you can really put the sugar to them. It really makes a big difference. So if you're thinking about doing that, it really makes a big difference for a lot of folks. So I'd encourage you to keep looking into it.
If you're going to drill your buckets out, one thing we tried, Stephen don't have a drill press in his house. He tried hand holding a drill, and it's going to walk around on you and it's going to walk everywhere. Mm-hmm. I got a drill press here, and the ones we use with a drill press, the plugs fitting absolutely tight. You don't have no problems with them falling through and wallowing out. We're running mostly gallon feeder buckets in South Georgia, and I was down last week, and even though they're a gallon feeder bucket, we're putting about 1 inch or 1.5 inches in those buckets. And down south, they're not even pulling those buckets right now. They're bringing in nectar down there right now. There's stuff blooming from the Macon line down, from I-20 south. They're really starting to bring honey right now. So we're building up a lot of drones real fast. So there's another thing to think about too. If you're putting buckets on, there's no need to fill the bucket up because it's going to sit there, and you have to lift that bucket off when you're pulling queens. So a full bucket in a bucket that's got 1 inch in it makes a difference at the end of the day when you start picking these buckets up and flipping them around.
Okay. And over to Dennis. Go ahead, Dennis.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, Don, I might be coming down through that area here in 30 days or so. I've got an incubator I rides in my seat.
Okay.
Could I manage to pick up the cells maybe a day or two earlier than?
You want to get them no earlier than 3 days before they're going to hatch. You probably could get them 4 days, but if you can get them 24 hours, that's the best. If you got an incubator, let me know what day you're coming down and we'll set a graft up. We got one large graft coming off the 21st, and I think we got another one to come off 7 days after that.
Okay, I've got an incubator that travels. I hook up to my cigarette lighter.
Right.
Yeah. That helps me a little bit. I'm just thinking, as distance I am from you, a day earlier even would help me quite a bit.
Yeah, because you take those packages and make some splits. Does your incubator have a plastic liner in it on the floor?
Hold still. I'll show you what I got. I got one of them.
Is it a Tractor Supply?
Nope, I've got a regular Reptile 600 or whatever, 6,000, and it runs off a 110 and it runs off a 12 volt. And it's
What's
got,
the surface like on the thing? What you want to do is
It's
put
hard.
a piece of felt or an old T-shirt in there. If you're going to travel, that way it doesn't slide that bowl around with your cells and don't bang them.
okay. Yeah, I've got, it'll have some trays where I'll have it in here where nothing will move. It's got a hard bottom. It's one Joe May recommended, and
Okay.
I got it, and then that way I can travel, and I can, if I go into the yard and picking up cells going to be delayed, I put them in the right temperature, and just gives me a little edge.
If you're going to get 100 at a time, we'll give you a discount on them. If you're going to buy 500, we'll give you a bigger discount.
Well, it'll be at least 100 the first time. It might be more. I'll holler at you when that time comes.
Okay.
I'm just kind of waiting on something's going on down there. I may slip by you on the way through, but I'll let you know ahead of time.
Okay.
All righty.
Okay, over to Raina. Go ahead, Raina.
Hey, Don. Just a quick question about the plug that is used in the pail feeders. What's the size of the hole? I know you had mentioned this. It skips my mind. What's the size of the hole you use for that, and how many holes do you use in the plug usually?
50 millimeter, and what I'm using is a size of 16 gauge staple. So get a drill bit that's about a 16 gauge. I guess it's one of the smaller bits. Probably Greg has the decimal number of that drill bit.
And just one hole?
And I told him a 16 gauge staple fit through it is perfect.
And you just use one hole?
One hole.
Okay.
And I think Greg timed it out so many drops per second, or 1 or 2 drops for 8 seconds or something like that. It works out real well.
Okay. All right. That's all I have. Thank you.
You want to comment on that, Greg, and tell them what size?
Yeah, you can get the drill bits from Harbor Freight. I think it's a 0.05. But what I noticed is using that staple, like Don said, actually not only is it faster because you just push that staple right through the plug, but if you look at the shape of the staple, it's almost rectangular. The drill bits themselves are circular, and if you use a drill bit and you have that speed and a little bit of heat, what it does with the plug is it makes a little conical depression on the underneath side of it.
Yep.
That can plug up sometimes, and it's circular, and it's kind of funnel shaped. If you just use the staple and bypass the drill bit altogether, not only do you not have to have anything special or another drill press and all that, but you can just press that staple right through there. The shape that it makes is absolutely perfect. And it doesn't leak. And if you just use just one hole, it's plenty. What I do is I put them upside down. When I was first trying to figure all that out, and I think I might have mentioned in that video, I think I probably drowned 30 or 40 hives, killed them completely, while I was trying to figure out which ratio of feed versus what size hole was right. But when you're mixing up a 2-to-1, that's the important thing, is that you got to mix a good 2-to-1. And if you use that staple, when you flip it upside down, it'll drip for a couple seconds, and then if you get like, eventually it was like 8 to 10 drips per minute. That's more than enough. But what I noticed is when you use that staple, it actually will pull a way better vacuum as well because of that shape, and it'll just hold that. The syrup, and then they'll come feed on it. When I did that and switched over and got it mixed right, I didn't drown anymore. So after I figured out and killed all those bees, that's when I started sharing exactly how to do it so you don't do that. So the main thing is just to look, flip it over, make sure if it's just do and it's just dripping, you need to add a little more sugar to it. Put it back in your vessel, reblend it until when you flip it over, it's just, at first it'll have a couple drips, it'll catch the vacuum, and then it's very, very little. So keep an eye on the drips. That's the most important thing, not so much how to make the syrup perfect or what size hole. Just look at it, and that seemed to help me a whole lot. But use that staple, and then like what Don also does is uses that bigger 7/16. What's the 7/16? What's the gauge on that, Don? I think it's a
16 gauge,
18.
but it's a 7/16 crown.
If you're using 5-to-1, and that it's real nice. You push that through. That's all yours, Don. That's what I made yours on, and that works out really good. what I like about it is not having to have little special tiny tools for every little special tiny job. If you can find something that you already have laying around, it'll always be the same. You don't have to go hunting up for one little tiny piece. So try the staples. I think it works better, and you always have them laying around.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Greg, can we get the sound effects again? Perfect. All right, let's see. Nobody else got their hands up, so we'll go with another web question. Oh, Jameson has a question. Go ahead, Jameson.
On the 5-to-1, do you use that year round, or is that just certain times of year?
We're buying it by the tote, and very seldom do we cut it. I think Stephen cut some last July or August, but there was a honey flow coming in there, so we didn't notice a big, difference in it.
Okay. When do you stop feeding and let them go out and collect their own nectar?
Well, they're not going to pull the syrup at all if there's any nectar coming in. I've done a video on showing you how to put honey in the entrance. Just make a line of, they'll walk right through it if there's a honey flow on. So that's why I'm saying, tonight, I mean, we put an inch or an inch and a half in those buckets. There's some honey flow coming in right now, so they're not really pulling much.
Okay. That's all I got right now.
We're trying to do everything the most efficient way. So, we used to buy sugar by the tote. It just takes a lot of time to mix the stuff. So time is money. If you want to make money, you got to keep, forging ahead.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, over to Jay. Go ahead, Jay.
I'm looking at trying to make a mixer to mix my sugar and syrup and stuff. What I'm looking at is doing just the sump pump and a barrel. Will that mix the 5-to-1?
You want me to tell you the cheapest way to go? Forget the sump pump. Go around to a yard sale and get an old electric trolling motor. Stick it down in there. Get a 55-gallon barrel. Cut the top out halfway. Hang that trolling motor in there and just plug her up. Come back after you had your coffee a couple times. Stick it in a bucket of water. Run it for 5 minutes. Clean it out good. You're good to go. You can pick up a trolling motor for about $20 to $30.
Right. Well, that makes
you don't have all them fittings to contend with.
That's true. But that'll make it as thick as a 5-to-1.
I don't know if I'd want to mix it with a trolling motor 5-to-1. Probably around 3.5.
Okay. I'll try that. See what I can do.
Now, mixing syrup and mixing sugar is two different things. Because, if you put too much sugar at one time, you got so much granules, you'll lock her down.
Okay.
Now, another way, too, people don't think about it. You could go get a piece of old rebar, about 2 foot, 3 foot long. And when you take those lawnmower blades away off your lawnmower, don't throw them away. You weld one to that rebar, stick it on a 1/2-inch drill, and man, you got a good mixer.
I've got a good mixer. It's made for mixing concrete.
There you go.
It's a good one. It's just the time doing it. I was trying to come up with something I could just set it up, let it run, and go about my business on the other stuff.
Yeah.
But that mixer for the concrete works good for it, as far as just mixing.
If it's a regular concrete mixer, how are you going to clean it out unless you leave it sit out in the bee yard?
No, this is one that it looks like a beater, like you'd have in the house.
Oh.
Like your old level beater.
Like a mortar mix, not a mortar, a plaster mixer for, plastering walls.
It may be. When I bought it, it was more of a mortar or concrete type, what they'd said.
Yeah.
But it's got 2 beaters on it. Work like your egg beater basically in the house. But it's got a 2-foot stem on it, and it's got a powerful motor. It'll go.
If it works, use it.
I have. I just, like I said, it takes time to start mixing very much at a time, So I was trying to come up with a quicker way.
The quickest way to do it, if you're not worried, I get barrels of sugar. I just throw some water in there, and if you got too many bees that's getting in it, just throw you a few hands full of pine straw in there and just keep adding water when you walk by. I mean, you're going to feed the bees in the fields, people all around, but time is money.
Yeah.
Set you 2 or 3 barrels out there and throw some water in it, let them feed themselves. If they're too lazy, let them go out and get it somewhere else.
Oh, all right.
Okay, over to Robbie. Go ahead, Robbie.
Hey, I saw a video a few months ago of bees on board baths. I guess they put sugar water in a board bath. Would you recommend that?
You know, you have to do whatever you think is going to work for you. I mean, I have taken bears. Let me see. I got some. Here's some bears that I use. These little bears. You see, they got a little top on them. Sometimes when I do presentations, I'll take a few hundred of these out. Now, this, I guess, the small one. This is about a 2-ounce one. I sell them for $6.50. And if you don't sell them and they get crystallized about them, I just take the top, sit them in the bee yard, let them clean them out.
Right.
And there's, you know, you have to do what's going to work for you. If you're worried about them robbing, then you don't want to do that stuff.
No, it's like you could use that to see if it's a nectar flow or not. Like a test.
Yeah. I usually take there's a honey bear like this. It's got a pointed spout on it. And I just draw a line across the entrance. I don't walk right through it if there's a honey flow on. But if there's not, they'll line up on it real quick. That's going to tell you 10 to 15 minutes when a honey flow starts and stops.
Oh, I was doing the open feed last year. I saw a bunch of bees in that bucket of open feed. Question is, can I walk up to the bucket and not be worried to be stung or?
But they're feeding. They're not going to sting you.
Okay.
I've had honey on my hands. Reach in, pull honey out of a hive, and hold my hand in front of a beehive and let the bees just land on it. They'll just lick all the honey off your hand and fly away.
Oh, cool. Okay.
You can't video that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I guess bees are pretty nice.
Yeah.
All right. Over to Brett. Go ahead, Brett.
Hey, everybody. Don, I bought a bunch of Antler Ridge 5-frame nukes, and I was wondering if you could just slap a solid bottom on them and drill a hole, or do you need that bee space?
There is bee space on those boxes because I bought several thousand from them. If you put your frame in there, there's going to have at least 3/8 clearance on the bottom.
Yeah, I was measuring it. It was about a quarter.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I'll be coming down there in April.
When I got mine, I had him build mine with the frame rest a little deeper and my boxes a little taller, because when we sell nukes, we just put a piece of plywood on the bottom and drill an 1/8 hole in the front, and we sell it with the box. And then we put a piece of plywood on the top with 3 holes. And the holes are 2.5-inch holes with screen on them for ventilation.
Yeah.
So, you know, when someone comes, they buy 5 or 10 nukes from you, and they're out there and they see the bees are so gentle, they always say, you got more nukes that you can sell, and they don't want no boxes. So your alternative is to sell them a cardboard box. And we don't recommend it, but if we do, we sell them for 15. And I tell them, for 25, you get a wood box. And then you can use it for transport, and then hang it on a tree and use it as a swarm trap. So the cardboard's going to deteriorate, but Antler Ridge, you can't beat the price for that. You know.
No, you can't.
We sell boxes here from Antler Ridge unpainted for $25, and we're buying them for less than half or less than a fourth. And, you know, I can't build them even if I got free lumber for that price. So as you move along from hobby beekeeping to making a living, you're going to have to save a nickel or a dime or a quarter wherever you can, and just keep on moving, or you're not going to make any money.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. No other questions, so I'll go with a web question again. James asks, how many frames of brood do I need to put in a new hive if I split it?
Well, if you've got a ripe queen cell, I wouldn't even recommend any brood. I'd recommend just bees and honey. Because if you got nights where the temperature drops on you, the bees are going to cluster on that cell. Whether you cut the cell or if it's a grafted cell. So if they pull off of that brood and the temperature drops down below 55, you're going to get chill brood. So you risk less resources. That's my thinking on it. But if it's midsummer or late May, if you want to add brood to it, I mean, you can do it, but you always run that risk when you've got a virgin queen in there that if those bees don't come back, that's a lot of resources that don't return.
Okay. Let's see, nobody else. We'll keep going with the web questions until somebody gets a question on here then. Angela says, I had a swarm move into a swarm trap that was being stored outside, single 10 frame that had 3-year-old frames in it. And I didn't notice until late in the fall, so I didn't move them. What is my best process for bringing them into spring and into a proper hive?
If they've been there all this time, leave them alone until the weather warms up, and then transfer the frames if they got wax that you can transfer. Because sometimes people have old equipment with frames in it, and maybe the frames are not spaced close together, or even if they're spaced close together, bees made some wild comb in there. So then you're going to lose some of your brood. Now, I've got hives like that that I've done in the past. And you can go to Harbor Freight and buy you a machete and stick a machete down between the frames and just slice up and down, pull one frame out at a time. Start on the outside and work to the middle. And hopefully you won't kill the queen. You put them in a new box, and every other frame, put new foundation in. Get them straightened around.
That's a good idea with the machete. Who needs the steak knife in there when you can go get a machete?
Well, I used to do cutouts, and when you reach in between walls, a machete reaches in there almost 2 foot, and it's wide enough that you can pick up a good piece of comb or honey. And I don't like honey running down my elbows when I'm doing a cutout.
Nice. And it's a good reason just to have a machete.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. And everybody's still being shy tonight. I don't know what it is. Those questions up, people, if you have one. All right, Mr. Burns.
I just wanted to throw our hat back in the ring there. We're commercial students of Don's, and we're one of Don's keepers. We're delivering his packages through Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. We still have some available, so if you're interested in Don's bees, that'll be the last weekend in April is when we're delivering those. You can go to naturesimagefarm.com. Take a look there. We'd love to get you bees. If you're up in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and you're looking for nukes, we will also have nukes available in mid and late May. And we also are shipping Ohio adapted fat bee man queens at the end of May as well. So if you are interested, if northern or more, if you think cold hardy bees is for you, we'd love to help you out with that too. So if we can help you out, shoot us a message on Facebook at Nature's Image Farm, or find me, Greg Burns. We'd love to help you out.
Thank you, sir. No questions. Oops, you're still muted. Okay, no more questions. Come on, people.
I thought they was going to stump me tonight.
Oh, Victor's not being shy. Go ahead, Vic.
Yeah, Don, on your Denton 3-hole queen cages, what size of Forster bit do you use on the 3 holes for your queen cages?
I use a 3/4 and a 3/8 on the end. Now, if you get a Forster bit, what I found is going to work good is if you got a drill press, put your piece of plywood in there and build it up to where the queen cage fits between two like 3/4 boards. It ain't going to turn and spin on you. Drill your 3/4 holes. Okay. No, drill your 3/8 holes first. Then drill your center hole, then one on each side. Because if you try doing it in reverse, you always bust out that little thin piece on the end because 3/8 hole. Now, if you're going to go to trouble to make your own queen cages, then cut your own corks. I mean, you could buy a cork cutter, or you can make it out of a nipple. It's a 1/4-inch nipple, galvanized nipple. Get about a 3-inch nipple, or I have a 6-inch one that I had for years, and just stick it up in the drill press and put a file on the bottom and just sharpen it right up. And then you take a chainsaw file and just touch up the inside, and you got a perfect cutter to cut out your corks, you know, for your queen cages. You go to the auto parts store and you can buy a sheet of that 1/4-inch cork or 3/8 cork. It's rolled up. You go to Hobby Lobby and you can buy you a foot of it. It'll last you several years. I think I bought a 20-foot roll. I don't know how many years ago, and I've been working there for years. I mean, there's a lot of ways to save money, but you know, you have to do what you want to do. A lot of people just buy their queen cages. But as you're starting,
Alrighty.
you got a lot of time, start making everything.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we'll take another web question. Let's see. Tammy says, I lost 5 hives this winter, lots of bees in double deeps. Bees are clustered around 3 to 4 frames and tons of dead bees on the bottom. So bees die for 3 reasons. No food. Okay. Nope. Yeah, I'm not really sure what she's asking here. Just thoughts on why her bees died. She treated with vaporized oxalic acid intermittently. Nothing else used for mites. Hives were tipped forward. Quilt boxes on top. Good ventilation. They still had capped honey throughout. So she's asking, why do you think they died?
First of all, I don't run doubles through the winter. I run all singles because if you lived up north and you got cold weather, the first thing you do if you don't use the rooms on the second floor is you block them off. So if you put them in a single story, and if the bees do get light, you can always have a hive top feeder. It still holds them down, but yet you can feed them. If you got a double deep, you're going to have heat loss. And then I don't know if she had screen bottoms on there, had the bottoms open, but the volume in there, I'm not a favorite of quilt boxes because the idea is it's supposed to wick away moisture, but you might wick away moisture and it sits there and now it starts to radiate cold, moist air downward into the hive. So I'm not a fan of that idea there myself. Same thing with cedar shavings. A lot of people like cedar shavings. I'm not a big fan of that.
Okay. Andrew has a question. Go ahead, Andrew.
All right. Can you guys hear me first of
Yep.
all? All right. You got kind of bad reception here. We're going to have an extended spring, so getting into February in through March, our temperatures are still kind of cool, maybe down to 30s, 40s at night, 50s during the day. How do you go about adding a second box if you're not ready to split that hive? Do you guys, I mean, does everyone put a second box on and then move some
If
frames
you're in
up?
February and you got them temperatures, then you don't want a second box on. Not unless you're in the south. And if you're in the south, you're in a cold area if you got them temperatures. And do you have a lot of bees flying in and out of these hives?
I'm not ready right now. I'm thinking kind of for like March and
Oh.
the next.
If you got a lot of bees flying in the hive and then lift the back up, if you're heavy, do an inspection. If you got no place for the queen to lay, then add another box.
Yeah.
But March would probably be your earliest time I'd put one on. We put them on in February here, but we got honey flow when the red maples go.
Yeah, it's probably mid-March or maybe even later, but I'm trying to think ahead of like how you go about doing that.
Are you running all one size box or are you running different size boxes?
5 frames.
Oh, 5 frames? You can put a box on, you know, late February. Put you a medium on a deep.
I mean, do you when I do that, do you take some of the, do you just put the box on empty or do you move some of those frames up?
Well, if you're putting a deep on the top, then you could checkerboard them. Yeah, that's one way, but a lot of people run mediums on the top of a deep on a 5 frame. Now, some people run medium 5 frame and they run a second box medium, then you can checkerboard that.
Gotcha. Is there like a temperature you start doing that, or is it just by volume of bees?
When you start seeing volume of bees, a lot of pollen coming in, you need to do an inspection to see how much room the queen's got.
Yeah.
Because if you're not doing an inspection, you're just guessing what's going on inside that hive.
No, I was in them. We're down in the teens. we're a little bit away, but I'm looking ahead. But Yeah, hopefully we're there in a couple weeks.
Before you put a box on, you always want to check the condition of the hive, the bottom box, because you could have queen cells in there. And if you just don't go in there and just lay a box on top, you're going to have a swarm, maybe 2 or 3 swarms out of that hive.
Yeah.
Hive frame builds up and gets in swarm cells a lot faster than an 8 or even a 10.
What when we're still kind of in this weird limbo here, we're getting down to freezing at nights, down to the teens still, and then up in 50s during the day. Is it okay? Like, I kind of want to get in there and do an inspection, but what temperatures do you wait till? Do you wait till a high 50s, 60s?
I like 55. You got 55 and above. If you're fairly quick going through there, but if it takes you a half an hour to go through a hive, wait till it hits 60.
Yeah.
Because most people that are familiar with their hive, they could go through a hive in less than 5 minutes doing inspection.
Yeah. Probably a good 10, 15 minutes at least for me, so.
Yeah, well, then wait till it gets, 55 to 60 degrees.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, let's see, over to, where is he? There's John. Go ahead, John.
Hey, Andrew. We don't really have to worry about too much until about April up here. I mean, we have some, up and down valleys with the weather, and that's where you get in trouble when you start trying to split the brood nest. But the first thing that's going to happen to you in spring on those nukes is they're going to become honey bound as soon as the flow hits. And that's what Don's saying, is you got to pull out the honey when you add your second box up top to give the queen room to lay. And at that time, if you haven't let her become too honey bound, there shouldn't be too many queen cells yet. But when you let her get packed up in there and she can't lay, that's the first thing they look to do is find a new home, half of them. So you're good until April. I wouldn't, throw some fondant in on top or some feed like that, but I wouldn't really get into them until early April because I wouldn't feed them much protein. I gave them a little bit about a month ago, like an ice cream scooper full of fondant with some pollen in it. But you should probably just, like Don said, lift the back of the nest, lift up the nuke, and if you feel like it's getting heavy, like it's full of honey, that's a good indicator. It's time to get inside the box and give some, some foundation in there to them. So you got a little more time.
Yeah, I'm not getting too antsy. I'm trying to think ahead a little bit.
You're getting spring
Probably get a
fever.
little ahead of myself.
Oh yeah. Hey, it's going to be 60 here tomorrow, Andrew. It's going to be. I'm going to treat them with oxalic acid. Is probably what I'm going to do, because it's warm enough if I do it in the day. So, if you want to borrow the wine, come on over. You can grab it.
All right, you know what? That sounds good. I'll come over and.
I'll be in the yard. Thank you. That's all I just want to mention something to Andrew about that. So.
And I've got 9 o'clock on my watch. So if anybody has any other questions, get those hands up right now. Jameson, go ahead.
You said that to get in your hives and make sure you have enough room for the queen to lay, would you recommend using old comb to replace ones with honey, or go in with new foundation?
Well, that's basically, preference of the beekeeper. I personally are selling nukes, so I'm putting new comb in all the time. But if you have experience and you have old comb, look at it carefully. If it don't have a lot of webbing and wax moth in it, or don't have chemical on it where you've stored it, some people store it on crystals. If you store it on crystals, you're going to have to let it air out. But then you put one frame in each hive, or 2 frames. I wouldn't put a lot of them side by side. I'd stagger them around a little bit.
Okay.
Anybody that's putting pollen patties on, if you're trying to stimulate. Now, we got our yards down in South Georgia. We're putting patties on now, but we're buying a pre-made patty and we're cutting it in 8 squares. So we're dividing it up 8 times, and we're putting that much on because they're bringing pollen in now, but all we're trying to do is just get a little extra protein in there for them to build up, numbers, because we're going to start, we've been shaking some packages out of our southern hive. And so we're trying to build up our doubles down there so we can start shaking packages in another week, 10 days. So that's the reason we're throwing a little extra pollen to them.
Okay. Over to Greg. Go ahead, Greg.
I just want to throw it out there real quick before we shut it down. There's a time of year where a lot of new folks are going to get started with beekeeping, and I can say it because I'm guilty as charged. I've done the same thing. When you're first getting started and you're thinking that you want to grow the bee yard out and turn it into an actual business enterprise, when you're figuring out that scale, you're still in this process where you're picking up too much information from too many sources. You'll see things where guys they love quilt boxes and they're feeding their bees, their hives, bananas, and they're doing all these little odd and end things. The thing to keep in mind, you gotta always keep in mind scale and context. If you're and you'll learn it from Don if you go visit his yard. It's all about scale and context. If you've got 2 or 3 hives, okay, maybe you'll spend the time and have the extra infrastructure, and you want to use a quilting box and go through all that into kind of a nonsense kind of a thing. There might be some parts in the country where you can't keep bees alive and you have to put them in a shed and you have to do certain things to them. But a lot of these methods are not exactly sideline or commercial scale beekeeping. It's backyard things, and it's not talking down about any of those kind of things, but it's just real important to keep in mind context and scale, because when you're growing and you're building out a bee yard, you have to be able to do things that are saving you time, saving you money, but more importantly, that you're able to keep your bees alive, keep making more bees. So try to, if I could just say, try to keep your mental bandwidth clear of as much of those distractions as possible and focus on what actually works. And the best way to do that is to go learn from somebody either in your area or someone like Don, a good mentor that's actually making a living at it, that's not trying to sell you ideas, is actually, or ideals worse off. You go learn from someone who's actually doing it and want to see it succeed. That's made a huge difference for us. So seek out a mentor like Don, go learn from Don, makes a big difference.
One thing that I will say is I started my YouTube channel way back in early 90s, and I did it on the thought of common sense beekeeping, and I still practice it today. I try to tell people come here, and there's already different things going out here, quilt boxes, wrapping a hive, doing this, doing that. And what do I keep telling all my students and people show up here? Think about the woods. If it's not in the woods, you don't need it. There's a lot of things and gimmicks that people are trying to sell. So keep it as simple as possible. I think you have better luck that way, because I've seen so many gadgets and gizmos out there that people just keep buying, and they don't know why they're bees. They're trying to follow 15 different people, and maybe they have good luck in one area working with these gizmos, I mean, there's, you name it, and there's gizmos out there. I try to keep it simple and to what works, common sense. And that's basically all beekeeping is, common sense. Bees lived a lot longer than when you get beekeepers in the mix, we have problems right away.
Okay, so that'll do it for tonight. Thank you, Don. Thank you, everyone. Next chat will be in 2 weeks, and feel free to stick around for the after chat if you'd like. So thanks, everyone.
Appreciate everybody showing up, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Write them questions down.